You hear me? You hear me? You hear me?
Michelle, do you want something?
Who are you with? Marty. We're out of Des Moines. Yeah. Out of everywhere. Out of everywhere. Out of everywhere. Okay. How you doing? All right. Sit over here.
That was fine right here. All right. I'm fine.
I hope you can hear us. Let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming out this afternoon. And I know in the letter, the notification we got, we talked about identity theft, which is a very, very big issue for a lot of folks. And Michelle Mustang here works for me actually. Her mother, who was just recovering the last few weeks from hip surgery, found out that someone in Pennsylvania had used her credit card for $7,000 worth of charges. Obviously, she was not in Pennsylvania at the time. So, but we're trying to put together some legislation to address that, so folks know. Court reported increased penalties for that, and it's something I think is a huge issue. So any input that you can give us as to what you think we should be doing, what the way to address it would be very much appreciated. We'll just open it up, but let me say a couple words. Obviously, we've got some really big issues facing here pretty quickly as far as at the end of September, the fiscal year. They get very excited about the fiscal year. But at the end of September, fiscal year runs out. The Senate hasn't done any of the appropriation bills yet. We've done 4 in the House. Almost got through my appropriation bill last week before that was for various reasons. But so it would give every indication that we're once again going to be in a continuing resolution which funds the government basically at the same level that it has been for the last actually about 3 years now that we've been doing continuing resolutions, which I think is very, very important. Unfortunate because we cannot then, cut programs or put more money in programs that actually cut programs we don't need or redundant, and put money in programs that are absolutely necessary. It just continues the same. And then when we get into November, we're looking at the debt ceiling. So I think what's going to happen, we'll have at least a 2-month continuing resolution that will fund the government into December. And at that point, hopefully there'll be a big agreement with the President, with the Senate, and the House so that we can all be on the same page and actually do funding as we should, rather than just this ongoing level of funding that we're having today, which is not good for defense, and do away with the sequester, which is going with defense. Most people understand we've got to cut more spending in Washington, but we've got to do it the smart way. That get rid of programs that duplicate each other, fund things that are necessary, and not fund things that aren't necessary. So, anyway, I would just assume just take questions, and the reason to have town meetings is to hear from you folks. It's not for me to stand up and give a big speech or. I'd rather listen to you. That's the way our former government is. So we can stay here for an hour, we can stay here for 15 minutes, whatever. Yes?
There's been a lot of talk lately about nutrition and how to improve it and stuff like that. And I'm hearing that there's some wavering going on in the House. My concern is if we pass anything, once it goes to conference committee with the Senate, then that awful bill, the Senate, is going to become law and penalize not only Americans who are citizens right now who can't find a job, but also those folks that are actually following the law, waiting in line, patient, honoring our country by following the rules. We're going to penalize them and reward the lawbreakers. What's your feeling on that?
Well, the Senate bill is not going to come to the House. It simply won't. We're going to continue to do step-by-step reform, focusing first of all on border security, fixing the identification system in the future, and making sure that we have a system in place so that employers actually know who is documented, who is undocumented, enforcement of that, and then get to the point somewhere, before you talk about any kind of status for people or anything like that, as far as their status, legal status in the country, those other things are going to have to be in place, but that's the House will not pick up the Senate.
What about a conference committee?
It won't, if it comes back in conference, if it was like the Senate bill where they give citizenship first and worry about the border later, it will not be voted on. It won't come back. I can assure you. Yes?
How is the president getting by with waiving particulars of the Obamacare law that everybody was so excited about, and now I think for political reasons that those stuff off? That's what I
Well, it's simply not enforcing the law. I mean, you can tell people not to do this. He's not changing the law, he's just not enforcing it. And whether you're talking about immigration law or what he's doing to basically against people who came in, or not born here, but came into the country as young people without any, and clearly the law is not all that. But it's a matter, and that's what is so frustrating to me when we have the gridlock that we have in the House and the Senate, is that the power of Congress is the power of the purse. And when you have a Senate that will not pick up what the House does, and the President will sign it, you can't stop it on activities, or you can't make them do something if they don't want to. I don't, the law and the healthcare law is very specific that the employer mandate goes into effect on October, January 1st. They're supposed to start enforcing October 1st. That's simply not going to do it. It's not a good answer, I'm sorry.
That's worried though about this guy too. I mean, how can they not be worried?
Well, you can ask our trackers from the Democrat Party over there
That's right.
taking this.
I have a question. The
Yeah.
Affordable Care Act has already been passed. Why are the Republicans wasting time trying to repeal it 40 times? It's passed the Senate, the House, the President, even the Supreme Court. Why are we trying to do away with something that's already been made wrong? That's not how government works.
Oh, you can repeal any law.
But why are they fighting? I guess I haven't had a
Well,
reason.
I think
I
if
haven't
you-
heard a reason why.
Why are they?
Yeah, why do they want to repeal the law?
I disagree. I think it's going to be great harm to the economy and to the American people and to the healthcare system.
Were you in the House when this bill came through
Yes,
and you voted no on it?
right.
Isn't that the way government works, the majority rules?
Well, that's why it's law.
Yeah,
But you can also get a majority to repeal that law too.
and you can, but I think you're fighting a battle that shouldn't be fought. I don't understand.
I appreciate your opinion.
Yeah. Well, I see half of the people here are on Medicare. If that isn't the same thing as an Affordable Care Act, I don't know what is.
Well, they're cutting $700 billion out of Medicare in the Affordable Care Act,
It's waste and fraud that's being done.
which is home health care, nursing homes. That's what they're cutting.
No, it's not.
$400 billion of the 700 is nursing home and home health care. So if you're in a rural area, if you're in a rural area, I think it's going to be very difficult to have access in the future, if all of this is enacted, to quality nursing homes. Certainly home health care is going to be dramatically affected already with the competitive bidding as far as the medical devices. If you say you want oxygen in your home and you want to stay in your home,
Right.
they're doing everything by mail order.
No, it's not. I'm on the Board of Health in this county, and we provide a lot of home health care. As far as I know, nothing's been cut.
Well, you go over to Council Bluffs, Southwest Iowa, and the people who provide that equipment and those benefits and service are going out of business. Because it's a pilot program in certain parts of the country right now, that's one of them. And they're no longer, you have to mail order. There are people from Florida bidding on places like Omaha and Southwest Iowa that have no way of ever servicing.
I agree, and we need to cut that. But I'm
That's how they're cutting.
because Republicans say they support business.
Right.
You don't want these businesses that perpetuate fraud to go out of business?
The home health care people are fraudulent.
Yeah, well, a lot of them are.
Really?
Like I said, the ones in Florida.
No, but they're the ones getting the bids to take care of people in Southwest Iowa, and they have no intention of doing it under the health care law.
I'm not sure that's true.
Go over to Council Bluffs and ask. Talk talk to the people who
We're
provide.
in one area is a big thing.
It's not part of the pilot program if they want to do this nationwide.
We'll agree to disagree.
As long as we're not disagreeable.
That's right.
There you go.
Okay,
Considering that there is separation of church and state,
yeah.
explain how President Obama and them can force religious institutions and colleges, etc., to force them to do something that is against their religion. We're supposed to have separation of church and state in this country.
My question is, what things are you saying they're being forced to do? You're saying things, but you're not telling us what
Birth
they're
control,
are.
birth control and situations like that.
Abortion.
Sterilization, you need it. I mean, abortion, I mean, there's...
Let's direct the questions to me.
I'm sorry.
Somebody else wants to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Congress. My name's Jason Gibbs. I work with Collective Economic Law for the full civil life. Obviously, the price of power is very, very important to us. We constantly are working to control costs. The costs that we can't control. You know, material costs are going up, regulation, and biggest issue is
The regulations that are coming out of Washington are shutting down the power plants, and it's just simply going to drive up the cost of power and everything. And there's no end in sight of the regulations. Shutting down the coal plants, nuclear plants, so those are the type of regulations that we in the business serve the rural area. We just can't tell them, and our members can't do it right. So that's a big concern.
I do want to make sure that you understand the cost. At least we are for all the above as far as energy sources. We both belong to the CIPCO, GMT, and they're close to 60%. Well, no, so it's 60% CO2 emission free. So carbon dioxide free with nuclear, hydro, wind being the biggest emissions.
Do you know what the percentage? I thought it was about 60% statewide is coal power, electrical generation.
CIPCO is exceptionally high because they are partners in the Duane Arnold nuclear project.
The co-ops only 20% of that. Simple was 20% more than what we spent. And used to be like now.
It's Florida, it's Florida or Florida.
7%. And in our case, for farmers sector, we buy about 8% of our energy from renewable energy. So we're way ahead of the curve in that respect, and then we get the rest of it from CIPCO, we're getting 60% as far as
I guess our ask would be that lawmakers consider the impact that's going to have on the price of power, which also trickles right now going on the effect on business, jobs, mom and dad, how living on the farm, it's everything.
No, it's going to have a dramatic increase in rates to make this conversion. It would probably decommission a lot of coal plants, which is what they want to do. The EPA is writing these regulations. There's no authority. There's nothing in the Clean Air Act that says they can do this. But continue to do this. But no, it's going to have a dramatic impact as far as the cost of power, especially in rural parts of the state. And that's one advantage we've had is that we've been pretty competitive. You guys have done a great job as far as being competitive on rates. It's going to
regulations are not only in that business, in a lot of banking and financial services companies, paperwork is getting to be burdensome to the point of that consumers end up having to pay for it. Things that are probably not needed, especially when you get out. I was trying to change an address this week, and I just couldn't call. I had to have something in writing because of the security that's being established. And I can see why if somebody else were to call in and change my address, I guess I'd like to have some security there. Be careful what you ask for when it comes to these regulations, because it becomes burdensome for a lot of business. Bankers are struggling, small town banks are really struggling to stay above water with all the things they have to do.
Well, and I think the impact certainly on a business like yours, you mentioned the banks and credit unions, I don't care, any financial institution like that. The smaller ones are going to have it very, very difficult. They're not going to be making home mortgage loans anymore just because of the paperwork and the compliance costs. And you got to, and frustration for me is it's the credit unions and small banks in rural Iowa are not the ones that cause the problem.
That's right. That's right.
But they're paying the price, and the Dodd-Frank bill was supported by the big New York banks that caused the problem, and fought by the small banks like in Iowa. And for the reason, I mean, the compliance officer of most of the small banks is also the cashier of the bank, probably the part-time teller and bookkeepers. They simply can't comply with it.
So they're going to get swallowed up.
Well, and yeah, for them to be competitive, there's going to have to be a lot of consolidation, and we're seeing some of that already, and you're going to see a lot more of that. And then what that does in a small town, if you have local ownership of the bank, it makes a big difference when you have that compared to a branch in somewhere. Because that owner is going to invest in the community, is going to support the baseball, little league, and the whatever different organizations in town. Third party, big bank that is going to swallow up these farms. It simply does not have the same ownership in the community. They do. It's going to make affect the fabric of rural Iowa.
A couple of comments. I heard earlier about the Affordable Care Act, and the first problem I have with that is it was fraud in the inception. When it was run up there, they took 10 years worth of income, balanced it against 6 years worth of costs, and said it's balanced. It's going to be fine. They said now they're having a problem. I know CEO Scoring has got it close to $1 trillion over. It's out of whack. So when you talk about, let's just go ahead and do it because it passed the House and the Senate. Well, guess what? It was a fraud to begin with. And so there are a lot that needs to be done with it. And I don't see how many ways I should be able to save it. That's the comment on that. The comment I had, and we talked earlier about it, for veterans and people in the service and people in the State Department, for example, my family's been both. We have to have a national policy whereby we're going to send somebody out to harm's way. You're going to go out and support them and get them back. This business about Benghazi, when we had the Secretary of Defense stand up there and say, well, we can't go in and support them at all. We don't know what's going on. And then have the Secretary of State later say, well, it's too late. What's the difference? Well, the difference is you're not going to get young men and women to go out and help protect this country if you don't support them when they get into trouble out there. And this business that they pulled on this is infuriating members of the veterans community. I'll guarantee you that. And you're not going to get those young men and women to put their lives on the line to protect everybody in this room again. It's not going to happen. You get left out there to get shot and killed, and somebody 4,000 miles away just can't give any support to it. And just doesn't seem to care. And they don't know where the president was. And And now it's coming out, maybe Valerie Jarrett said it's stand down. If that's true, somebody not in the loop is giving orders on what to do. There is a huge, huge problem. And as those facts come out, this is going to be a very, very bad thing for this country. We've got to have a national policy that says, you can send us out there, they're going to come protect us when we need to be protected. And don't just leave us lying around out there. John Smith was painting targets with his laser finder. There was no aircraft up there. He thought there was, I'll bet you. I'll bet you. When they didn't have any support for them and they were told to stand down and went through all this, as that comes out, there's going to be a lot of things happening in this country. They're not going to be good. We can't have that. We can't have that. We need to get to the bottom of it.
That's all. Well, and the committees are going to continue to do everything we can to get to the bottom. And I can tell you, the speaker, this just drives me crazy. That we haven't been able to get at the facts. And you've got people who are there who are not allowed to talk to Congress.
I've even heard, Congressman, that they are now having to take a lie detector test every month to find out whether they didn't talk to Congress. Now that is outrageous. Outrageous. And we should all be ashamed of that. Every one of us.
Okay. Follow-up question, something we've talked about before, and I want to know where we are now. I am a big supporter of allowing the government to tax internet sales. Rick and I have personally known people who have gone out of business because people could go online, and like you know, and there's so much. I'm opposed to it for two reasons. I'm in favor, first of all, it's hurting small businesses, and secondly is when our government is so deep in debt, we're missing out on millions and millions of dollars of taxes. So I know last time we talked, you were still investigating, so we're already doing that now.
You're talking about the taxes, sales taxes that are not paid on products that are purchased from the internet.
Yes.
Okay. My opposition would be taxing the internet, access to the internet itself, which is a different issue. Sometimes the issues get confused. As far as it wouldn't affect the federal government, because those are state and local taxes that are being collected or would be collected. So it's not a federal tax that's being collected. But yeah, you'll see, there's some very positives, I think, and there's a fairness issue that if you're buying a product over the internet and from a company in Iowa, you pay the sales tax. But if you buy a product from another state, you don't pay the sales tax. And there's a real equity problem because it makes it real expensive for Iowa to buy products from Iowa. There's also some concern on the other side that maybe it is or isn't for some of the small businesses that currently do a lot of their business over the internet. There's a lot of Main Street businesses that actually use that all the time. And there's some pushback from that community. So I haven't signed on to the bill to do it, but I want to hear from you folks basically what you think of that. But I don't want to confuse the issue that you're talking about taxing on the internet, so I would definitely oppose that.
I'm talking about taxing sales.
Right. Of products purchased on the internet. Right.
It gets complicated if you try to do business in several states, or all the states. Every tax is different in all those jurisdictions. How is a small business in Iowa going to be able to know those taxes in all these different states and be able to collect the right amount? So,
Well, that was
Walmart can do that easy.
it's his bill.
Yeah.
It's a Walmart bill.
They're doing business in all the states anyway.
But the one big problem is we need a established clearinghouse. So that if you're purchasing a product from, you're in a zip code, they can basically tell you what your tax is, whether it's a local tax, a state tax, everything. But right now, there is no clearinghouse to do that, so it's going to be, there's some problems.
Obviously.
But the equity question, I think, is very real. Yes, sir.
I have a statement from being, I'm a union representative, Catholic, and a member of CCI, and on immigration reform. My concern is, without giving them a path to citizenship, we're continuing on the path we're on, of having a lower level of human beings. I mean, in my view, it was slave labor to run America on. And I would like to know if you would, the right circumstances.
Define exactly how this will work. The path to citizenship. Tell me what you see as is the path to citizenship.
Tell them that you'll be a U.S. citizen, just like my ancestors were when we came here.
Immediately?
No. I think there should be, if you had fines, if you had unpaid taxes, all that, and, you go to classes, you learn English, you take the steps to prove yourself as value to America. And at that point, you'd be allowed to be a U.S. citizen like the rest of us and our ancestors were. I just want to know if you support.
What about the folks that have gone through the legal process, been in line for 10 years?
Well, my problem is
to get citizenship. You're going to let them go ahead of the people who have been in line for 10 years?
Well, first off, I don't understand why they've been in line for 10 years.
It's how long the process is.
Well, that's how much the process takes. That's the path of citizenship. We have these people here. We're going to send them back. We're going to keep them here in the agri processes being abused. And I followed up on how they were treated in agri processes. And that's my concern. I mean, we've got human trafficking going on in the United States. It's disgusting. Why is that going on? Because people in the United States, whether it's a processing plant or a construction company, are paying these people under the table wages, or paying them as misclassifying as contractors so they can abuse the system. And whether it's a 10-year process, you have to have something for these people that have a goal to become U.S. citizens, or you have to, you know as well as I do, rounding up everybody that came across the border illegally isn't that way. We have to have some kind of resolution, leaving them as a second-class human being. That just doesn't work for me in a lot of ways. I mean, number one, it keeps this slave labor lower form of a human being in the United States, which I don't think is right. I know, just give them, you need to go through, they have a criminal record, and I'm saying at this point, coming here illegally, isn't a criminal offense in the whole instance. But yeah, put them on the same path as everybody else has to follow.
This will open up the borders, right, and give people citizenship.
I don't think that. They're already here.
No, but what, aren't you creating a real incentive for people then to continue to break the law and come across the border?
Well, I think they're taking steps to stop the flow of illegal immigration. I don't see anybody wanting to go after companies and corporations that are hiring these people and punish them for doing it.
Well,
and agri process, all the stuff they did, and they didn't get charged with,
he's in jail for like 30 years.
For what?
For what he treated.
Maybe he's in jail for lying to the bank on financial. He's not on that.
And it's immigration issues.
I'd like to know which ones they are, because one, they were up there in file, they were off those charges.
Well, there was an actual conspiracy out there to bring in people knowingly conspiracy and Post bill to bring people in illegally, and that was that they had a pipeline. And so,
And it's so good. Outside of America, you come here and work after all this happened. They want to speak up. They want people that can't go, they're being mistreated, that can't go and get.
okay.
I just want to know if there's any circumstance you wouldn't be in favor
Well,
of that.
we're going to do a step-by-step approach to the immigration issue. First of all, it's going to be security border. And until there's actual metrics that we can guarantee that the border is secure, it won't go beyond.
And you're satisfied with the border shut down, you mean
And also, then you were talking about employers, enforcement and verification, and that would have to be in place. I agree with everything, and I met with probably 50 or 60 CCI folks yesterday in my office.
I was there, I'm gonna tell you, I'll be on the fence a little bit. But we're gonna let these people here, they either have to have, half the citizenship where they want to be.
But we didn't let them.
I didn't see a lot of effort stopping these people who are sending recruiters to other countries to get people coming.
No, and those people are being processed. Absolutely.
I saw no labor charges or violations like that that sent them to jail. They went to jail because they lied to the banks on financial stuff. That's what they went to jail.
There was immigration.
They had 14-year-olds working in the company. They allegedly had managers that were raping underage girls that were working there, and nothing was done about that. The human rights violations were ignored. I think they should give them half citizenship or figure out some way to resolve it.
Anybody else have an opinion?
On that issue, I used to be an immigration attorney in Los Angeles. I practiced law in 75 and I retired as a I was out on several of my clients. Carroll Cable being one, there were 150 people around up there. I was actually out on the raid. So I saw what they were doing in the late 70s, trying to do something about it. We do have a very porous border at this point, and something we need to shut down so you get kind of a handle on what's going on. One thing that I haven't seen that I would like to hear about is where does our border control rate relative to the rest of the world? And I'll tell you, it's right at the bottom. I'll guarantee you our southern border, maybe the northern border of Mexico, is far unlike what the southern border of Mexico is relative to the rest of Latin America. They don't allow people to come across their border the way we allow coming across our border. It's night and day. So we, compared to the rest of the world, are extremely lenient compared to the rest of the world. Europe too. I've got relatives over there and what they do relative to people coming into their country. So we are very lenient in terms of what we do. Now, I grant you, there are some companies that urge them to come in, but the whole point is that we can close the border down reasonably, then you have a much better handle on what you can then do. But Tom's point is very well taken. We have people waiting in line under the visa system. They can't get in, and we try to put 11 million people in front of them. How fair is that? Not fair at all.
That's not what was said. He didn't say put the 11 million people in front of him. He said get a path to citizenship. There's a big difference between just letting 11 million people come in. But let me remind everybody who sits in this room, guaranteed your great-grandparents came across those borders and didn't have near the problem with citizenship as they do now.
They came in
Illegal.
Yeah.
Illegal.
didn't break the law to do that.
Right.
Really? Well, I got Indian blood in me. And those Indians were here. And the part that's not Indian, they came over on a ship legally to the United States because there was no citizenship needed for them to really come across.
There's also no welfare program either. My great-grandfather came over legally from Europe. He was successful by the sweat of his brow. He didn't have to have his hand out. You cannot tell me that every single person that comes here
I can tell you,
is here to work.
I can tell you right now, people with money don't have a problem getting citizenship in the United States. People without money do.
My grandfather didn't have a dime He worked 3 jobs to pay for his family. I don't care if people want to do that. I want them here. So what I'd like to see is maybe some welfare reform, so people like me that bust our butts don't take my tax money out of off of my family's table and give it to somebody here who didn't earn it because they had their hand out. That's what makes me angry. I'm not against immigrants here. I am a great granddaughter of an immigrant. I want them to come here. I want them to work hard. That's what makes America
If they're
successful.
illegally here, they're not getting handouts.
Oh, I beg to differ.
Now,
Oh, I beg to differ.
they get medical attention, but they're not, if they get food stamps and they're using illegal numbers, and that's a problem in the system itself.
Oh, then if we reform the welfare system, then we will have, the only immigrants that will be coming here are the ones that want to work hard, and those are the immigrants we want.
Anyway, my question was, what do we do with all the people that are here?
I would agree. I don't know how physically you could remove the weapon.
You're not going to be able to do it. I appreciate it. But if you don't give them citizenship, you're basically leaving a group of human beings with lower level slave labor.
But, you know, there's what, 40 to 50% of people who are undocumented today in the U.S. who came in legally, who had simply let their visas expire. You know, came as students, they overstayed, they came here to work, their visas ran out, they overstayed. That is a huge part of it. But that's not a criminal offense. Crossing the border illegally is a misdemeanor criminal offense. But if you overstay your visa, it's a civil offense. So I think there's some equity there. There are, and I have great personal empathy. In my old district, I had Postville, Marshalltown, I had Boone, Perry, you know, a lot of meat packing, a lot of very high percentage. And I went to tear your heart out. Oftentimes, some of the young people they don't have the food that they get.
And they were brought to Omaha, Des Moines, they were meat packing centers, they were good jobs. The only reason they moved them out into the rural areas is because they got away with bringing illegal aliens into work. Like
So verifying by the employer, we need to verify that the employer had this legal citizen to hire. Is that what we need?
That's one thing we need, and if they're not following that, then the corporations need to be punished in the same way as
I actually absolutely agree. I mean, if people are not just thinking illegally, like in Postville or other places. What's interesting in Marshalltown, they actually fine SWIFT with their like $250,000 because they were asking too many questions. Yeah, seriously. They were trying to do their job plus, and they got fined.
I don't believe they're down in Mexico saying, let's go to America and sign up for welfare. They're coming out there looking for work.
I lived in Arizona for 16 years. That is not true. That is not true.
When I was practicing immigration law, I know, this is in the late 70s, they actually had classes in the Philippines, because I had a big following in the Filipino community. They were teaching their grandmothers how to file for welfare and supplement the Social Security. They already had the forms, and they showed them how to fill them out. They were ready to file as soon as they got here. And they weren't coming legally. They were just coming across, filing for supplemental Social Security the moment they got here. So your comment about Mexico, I assume it's the same.
They had our brochures in Mexico. So
They
I've
do.
seen that.
That's my point.
My point is, if they're filing for Social Security, how are they getting it without having work record?
You don't
What I'm
have
saying is they
you don't have to have work
every way they can.
What's
that?
My question is for you, and I just want to know if any way you can support a path to citizenship, whether it's 10 years, whatever.
Well, that's why I want you to define what you mean.
I don't want to put them ahead of people, but we're not sending them back. We're not sending them back. We need to do something for them.
I actually agree with that. I think we should reinforce laws because these people are already here. So we should reinforce the laws saying if you are putting the effort forth to work and to make a living for yourself, to support your family, by yourself and you're not, you know, if you're coming here to work hard, then I feel like you should be able to stay. If not, then maybe, you know,
If I broke the law tomorrow, went to prison for 10 years, I'd get out and serve my time in probation, prove I was going to be a benefit to society. I would, you know, at that point, be given my right. You're either going to kick the back or you're going to let them resist.
Yes.
I've got one.
She's had her hand
Right. I'm going to change the subject if that's okay. Senator Harkin just announced some proposed recommendations for Social Security, changing the limit, making some increases in the monthly annuities. How do you feel about that?
Well, we have a situation actuarially today where Social Security is going to be bankrupt, and to increase benefits, that's how dramatic he was talking about.
Well, he was talking about taking a cap off wages. So that would increase the pot, so to speak, and allow some
Taking
of
the
the
cap off
lesser.
entirely?
Yes.
And
Well,
so-
if you weren't dealing with human beings, you might be okay. But what just the reaction will be, the people who make high income like that, and I hope the Democrat Party gets my picture taken here. I don't know why we have to do this for political reasons. It's unfortunate, I think. You're going to find that those people are the best able to take their income in other ways. Social Security taxes are based on earned income. What they'll do is take their income as they'll set up a subchapter S, pay dividends, which would not be subject to Social Security. And so you're going to see the same people that you are going to tax, supposedly a lot more, are not going to pay that tax. If they did, always remember the benefits are based on what you paid into it. So you may have some people getting $150,000 a year in benefits and Social Security while somebody else is getting $20,000. I don't think it's going to have the desired effect. But actually, I mean, there are 10,000 people a day of us baby boomers signing up for Social Security. 70,000 a week. It's going to go on for at least 20 years. It's going to go broke. If you increase benefits today, I mean, the president's even talking about modifying the consumer price index as far as the increases. So I appreciate this proposal. I would have trouble seeing how it's going to work, be effective.
Yeah, well, and maybe somehow, I guess what kind of got to me were some of these people that are trying to live on $600-700 a month. And so I think that was maybe what started the conversation.
You understand the disparity, though, is based on what you pay in?
I understand. But, you know, we're living longer, and so a lot of people never had the opportunity to make.
And actuarially, we have a real problem with Social Security. So that's one thing. If there's going to be any resolution and fix to it, it's going to be a bipartisan solution. It has to be political.
Doesn't that have to be in everything?
Yeah, it should be, and that's probably, God bless you, but that's probably why there's such pushback on the Affordable Care Act. It was absolutely totally a partisan issue. Now, one Republican in the House or Senate, and it was jammed through. And that's part of the problem. You made my point, I guess. Yes, sir.
I got something that's a little more closer to home than some of this anyway. I was coming to the house to get its act together and pass the farm bill similar to what the Senate passed. And by separating off the SNAP program and those, it sounds to me like they're trying to balance the budget on the backs of the low income and the poor and children.
Didn't have the votes. We're desperately trying to get something to conference with the Senate. That's why I split it. I disagreed with that, but we could conference with the Senate as with the section we have passed and bring it back to have both the nutrition title and the farm policy title in it together.
So that could be added back in the conference committee level.
Anytime you have two bills, one in the House, one in the Senate, and they have an item in one of the bills, it's always conferenceable when it gets together. So you could bring it back in. No, it's very frustrating, and it's there. Some people thought it cut too much. Some people thought it wasn't enough. So there was not a majority to pass. I think there's probably some need for some reform somewhere in the program. Eligibility requirements have become very lax. There are 19 states in the country today that will send, you ever heard of the LIHEAP program, which is a low-income heating assistance program? 19 states will send people $1 a month. That makes them automatically eligible for food stamps. Only so that they can sign up to get the benefit, to get that money into their account. If you raise that state contribution from $1 to $20 a month, they'd have to give people for life. It would save about $8 billion. You know, there's a lot of legal efforts to take advantage of the system right now. The state's trying to gin up money. So there's reform. What I chair an appropriations subcommittee, which deals basically with the discretionary portion of the budget, which is about a third of it. We have cut about $100 billion on the discretionary side. The mandatory side is what entitlement side of the budget is what is growing out of control. And until we address that, and with the farm bill, I mean, the farmers are willing to give up $20 billion over 10 years in support. $20 billion, and that's 20% of the whole bill. As farm stuff, 80% of it is nutrition. Just to have some mild reforms on the nutrition side that would balance it out. And that's entitlement spending, which we have to address. Anyway, sorry that was a really long answer. Yes?
I get a great deal of mail on the UN raising the tax on insurance.
Tax on
The UN raising the tax on insurance.
she gets a great deal of mail about the UN placing the tax on insurance. As long as we're a sovereign nation, that's not bad. Where do you get the mail from? Who sends it to you? Do they ask for money? I just tell everybody, you get solicitations, and that's what they are, solicitations. Be careful. Remember the notch baby issue? Those people make millions of dollars every year. Never, I've been there almost 19 years, I've never heard from a notch advocate in Washington, but they've made millions of dollars scaring seniors. That's what should be illegal.
I had a quick statement there, along with what I did do it. It's quick. Now, I wasn't asking the question, they did not answer it again, whatever. 3 years before agri-processors was raided, they had an organizing drive from United Food Workers, unionized that plant, they had enough cards to file for election. They were denied it because the agri-processors come forward and said 50 of the people that signed cards are illegal aliens, so they're not eligible. And nothing was done. They just, oh, they're illegal, their cards don't count.
Well, I would,
You want to check on it, call Jerry Messer, the United Food.
I have no reason not to believe it. When they did enforce the law, they did it in such a way that was absolutely helicopters and 100 police cars swarming in. I mean, you thought it was a military assault. It was horrible how they did it.
And how they treated people afterwards, or whether they were illegal or not. This is America.
It was, last question, right?
Okay, two related things that I'm not hearing the discussion about. You're talking about immigration, okay? The people are coming here for jobs, okay? But on the other hand, we have here in the United States have had hundreds of companies who have outsourced from our country to Mexico. And I'm trying to figure out, why on earth can't our government do something in a way of taxing or something to where there's something, that if these companies are going, and we've got companies from right here in Iowa that have outsourced jobs and opened up their factories in Mexico. So, what's happening? Why isn't there some kind of dialogue or something going on there with between our two federal governments?
I think you have to look at the driver jobs going, it used to be labor costs. It really is not an issue anymore. Industries that have moved just across the border, labor costs may be somewhat cheaper, but not to the extent of course you talk to anybody in those businesses today, and the regulations that they have to deal with in the United States, everybody wants worker safety and all those things, but the compliance costs.
You mean like the OSHA things?
Well, that's only one of them. All the new restrictions, everything else that are put up on here, it costs them, and the cost of doing business in the U.S. is dramatically higher. Then the labor costs are incidental to very low. And the taxes. We have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. So if they have an entity there at a lower tax rate, it's a huge advantage to move that business. And again, a middle management person in China today makes about the same as a middle management person does in the U.S. So it's not about labor costs. It's about taxes and regulations. It's what's private people. And right now, you can't bring that money, profit back here without waiting to pay tax over there first, and then they bring it back here and pay 35% again. So what happens if capital stays overseas and it's reinvested over there, rather than giving it to the West?
I was mainly thinking about Mexico.
Well, it's the same thing.
But same
It
thing.
doesn't matter.
Okay.
Labor costs are not the driving factor. It's the regulations and taxes.
Federal especially in law, is international trade with immigration. And what ultimately happens, when you have the cost buildup, you don't ship them out of the country, the consumer here pays a lot more for the goods than he would otherwise. And it's the consumer, it's everybody in this room that doesn't want to pay that. And that's why you wind up having to find a cheaper place to produce, whether it's regulation or labor or whatever. And that's what started the whole thing. It's the American consumer. I didn't want to pay it, you didn't want to pay it, nobody here wanted to pay the extra price to have the product produced here. And that's what it's all about. It's each one of us in this room that does it.
Remember when Walmart used to brag about the fact everything in the store was very new?
Not anymore. Made in China.
Anyway, we've got to go. And thank you all very, very much for coming. And again, we may disagree, but we don't disagree. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
So they need to.
can't live off of it. You know, and it would be
That'd be a good
Something like that is a lot of large. We have a lot more
All right, thank you guys. Thanks for coming, guys. I think we can verify
So, you know, I got no I tell all the way to Gloria back, I can't get back here in time, and if I do get back here in time, it's not right on time. Oh, yeah, I get all the, I get all the.
Yeah, we haven't seen any of it.
I was gonna come out of the drywall and I had to help my son-in-law to go back, so I was getting ready to get up that way, he's like, don't even come up here, we got more choose some of you Indians as it is right now, so.
Probably the big.
I'm pretty compassionate.
Trying to get
somebody had to work.
I almost
illegally work.
I got barred to do that.
The reason the problem is when I see agricultural processors ignoring the fact that agricultural processors are saying 50% of our employees are openly in introductory activities. Take care.
Yep.
All right.
sorry.